What a beautiful version of that song.
Mhm. Now it's our pleasure to say, Denny, take it away.
Denny, your mic is muted.
Oops, unmute, Denny.
Still muted. There we go.
There you go.
There we go.
Take it away, my friend.
Good morning, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here, and especially this particular Sunday, because it's the Sunday after Jenny, and I'll explain that to you as we go along. But she was such an inspiration to me, and I could feel how everybody was taking her in. She was so real and so present to what her experience had been. And it was a perfect follow-up for this talk that I'm going to give today. In fact, it's almost eerie, although of course it played out even more as my week went along and I remembered things. But trust has been an amazing part of my life, and it was certainly a part of Jenny's. And it was such a joy to hear all of her experiences with trust and how much she trusted. And it rang so much to my life. And I want to tell you about some of those things because I think it will inspire you. I hope so. And I tell you that to me, there maybe is nothing more important than trust, whether it's trust in yourself, trust in a God, trust in those around you, trust in circumstances, trust in a supreme help, just trust. It's just an amazing thing. And I'm going to blow your mind with a couple of my things. And I will also say I'm blowing my own mind because I have a very, very dear friend who yesterday showed true signs of dementia. And he was with me, and what I even had to go through in that day was huge. And it was fascinating me how I was living this talk. I mean, I really was. So I also could jump around a bit just because of that, because I'm not quite as in touch with my notes as I usually would be when I'm talking. But yesterday was difficult, and yet it was beautiful in the way we worked through it. And who knows what's ahead? But I'm grateful in that I trusted, and some of the things that happened even yesterday, my trust was sharpened, if you will. So, and I will also add to that the amazing serendipity that I've also had a near-death experience. And that, of course, related me as much to Jenny's talk as anything. And mine was the result of my believing that I was having a heart attack. It was a very mild pain that I was having, but there was a sense that I was definitely having a heart attack. And I will say to you that at that point, it could be that I was not necessarily trusting all the things available to me, because I actually drove myself to the doctor, which maybe wasn't too smart, but I got there just fine. And they said, yes, something was definitely going on with my heart. And they would not allow me to drive myself to the hospital. So I was taken to the hospital and I was examined. And it turned out that the heart attack, although I didn't know this at first, the heart attack was due to two blood veins in the back of my heart that were wrapped around each other, which of course was hereditary. I didn't know that, but it's what it was. And it was less threatening because that's what it was. I was told that probably that part of the heart would die, but it would not be a large part of the heart. I think it was about 7%. And that, probably I was going to be fine. So I was already given ways to start trusting. And while I was in the hospital, I suddenly did pass out. And it's when I had the near-death experience. And all of a sudden, I was someplace else, way up high, and I was walking down a hallway, and I was passing doorways. Mine was different than Jenny's. And so, that certainly tells me that every death experience can be a different type of experience. I was walking past doorways, and each doorway, within that doorway and within the room it represented, I was experiencing myself in a situation. And I began to realize that I was being asked, is that what I wanted to still continue? And there were different ones. One was when I was a very definite caretaker. And it was of two adults that were living with me, wonderful people. But it was really putting in front of me, wasn't I taking too much care of them? And I didn't know the answer to that right away. It was certainly being presented to me as something to evaluate. And then there were other things. There was, I was passing actually a doorway where I was speaking to a group of people. And I love speaking. I love public speaking. Certainly, I'm happy this morning doing this and enjoy it very much. And enjoy the feeling between me and the audience, and me and you, if you will. And I was really being asked, is that, really the step more that I want to be doing? It was as if I was being shown all different stages of possibility in my life, that maybe I was doing too much or not making a wise choice. And it gave me the opportunity to be presented with an evaluation. And all of a sudden, I was aware that I was going to be fine. And I opened my eyes, and there was a nurse working very feverishly with some machines. And I knew I was going to be fine. So I reached over and I pulled on her skirt, and she turned around, and I said, keep doing what you're doing, but I'm going to be okay. Well, I flipped her out. We talked later, and she said nobody had ever done that before. And she was a little freaked out, but she took my word for it. And she went on ahead, and I was okay. I was in the hospital a little longer and then off. I've never had a single problem with my heart since. So, and my life has kind of been like that, where I'm given a smattering of this, a smattering of that, and trust is called in, and I get through it. Very interesting way that it's happening, and I can tell you more about that as I go on in this talk and get more into my whole story. But really, the whole trust thing was built over my life. As I say, I drove myself to the hospital when I realized I was having the heart attack. And early on, I had a father who was an alcoholic. And the way my mother dealt with the alcoholism was trusting. And she was quite amazing. She really was. I just value what I got from her. It was beautiful. She taught me trust, no question about it. I would watch her standing at the dining room window when she knew my father was out coming home from business and probably was stopping to imbibe. And she would stand at that window for so long. And I would sometimes stand with her and wait to see the headlights. In fact, I remember writing a poem younger where it was watching for the headlights, and because that's what she was doing. And she always trusted that they were going to show up. And I could look at her face and I could see such trust that it was all going to be fine, but she was not going to leave her post until he was fine. He was home. And that was, just one of the many, many ways that this whole thing played out. And they rarely fought because she was quite accepting. She, I'm sure she would be titled an enabler, but she was there and a caretaker, but she was a very wonderful partner for him because he finally did stop drinking and began painting. And that's a lovely part of the story, but that's a long time down the way. And I found that watching her deal with wondering if everything really was going to be okay or not, or trusting that it was going to be okay, was such a lesson to me. But one day they did have an argument. And this argument I could tell was serious. It was something I hardly ever experienced between them. And during that argument, he was definitely threatening to leave. Now, this startled me. I had never heard my father threaten to leave or even argue with my mother. So experiencing my mother's trust and her ability to deal, I went and got his suitcase, which I lifted, and it was packed. And I took my jump rope. I'm not sure how old I was. I think maybe I was 7. And I took my jump rope and I tied the suitcase to the bed because I knew that if he was going to leave, he would take his suitcase and I would be disturbed by him removing the suitcase, and I could talk him out of it because I trusted that I could. That is such a memory. And, now as an adult, you kind of separate from something that was that personal and see it more objectively. And I can look at that and say, I did that. I was courageous enough to take things in my own hands as a child and trust that if he did take the suitcase and I was wakened, I could talk him out of it. I mean, these are big ways of trusting. And the suitcase was still intact, tied to my bed in the morning, and I knew he was still home because nothing had been disturbed, and it all was a happy story. But you move forward a couple of years, not a couple, I guess then I was 14, and my mother came to me, and I knew my father was inebriated and had gone to bed, and she said, "Your father is thinking of taking his life, and I've talked to him a long time. I think I've said all that I can. Will you go in?" And when I think now of, number one, her asking her 14-year-old child to go in and talk to the father, her husband, that's big. And you also think of my being willing to. And I said, of course I'll go in. And so she stayed out of the room and I went into the room and I talked to him. I kneeled down by his bed. I put my fingers through his hair. I loved him so much. And my father did not commit suicide. And, these things are big. And I'm very grateful as a mother. I never was faced with that. But as a child, I was. And you can imagine what I finally learned I could do. I could take things in my own hands, tie his suitcase to my bed. I could kneel down by his bed knowing he was dealing with something that big as his own life. And, it just, as Jenny talked and as I took in my own life, I was faced with how much trust I was taught as a child. And I'm so grateful for that. And that has played out in my life constantly. For instance, when we heard COVID was coming and everybody, including myself, didn't know what to expect. And we were afraid, not knowing. And I remember the trust that I had that one night, it came to me that I was protected. And I chose to believe that. It just came to me. And I really trusted that. And then it came to the point where the vaccine had been developed. And I had the opportunity to be faced with whether I was going to get the vaccine or not. And at first I said, well, of course I'm not going to get it. I trust that I am protected. But then I had an interesting thing happen within me. And that was, you're not going to get it. And all those people are. Don't you maybe want to be in union with them? Don't you want to have an attachment with them? Don't you want to? And so I decided to get the shot because I wanted to be in union with all those people getting the shots. And I got vaccinated twice, and I've had no signs of COVID. Who knows whether I've had it or not? There have been times when I've had coughing stuff going on, but I'm just trying to show you how many times, and I know you've been confronted with things that you have to trust, and I'm just giving you examples of mine and how much this mother of mine taught me trust. It was just an amazing thing, and I was very fortunate. And it's wonderful to feel trust. It just is a wonderful thing that someone is trusting you. And if you've had that experience, I know you're very, very much aware of it. I love the communion that I felt with people who were getting the vaccination. And I love that that was my choice. I've watched faith through my life, not just in my mother and other people, and I've been impressed with faith. I've always believed there was a God. It's taken different forms, and I still believe as much today as I did then. And I'll talk more about that later, but I feel very confident in life. My mother was a Sunday school teacher. Her students loved her so much, and she was really like a goddess to them, or the words failing me, but she just seemed to be able to talk her philosophy, her belief in such a way that it was strengthening to anybody having a conversation with her. And I was very fortunate in that way. I will always be grateful. I just cherish it very much. And then to hear Jenny and her trust, and it helped me celebrate my trust. And I hope that there are times when you've trusted yourself, and I'm bringing that to mind. And if I'm not, that, that's something that you have in your life that is different than mine. I also was working in my office one day, and I saw this bright light on my bookshelf, and I'm sure you've all had this happen to you, where all of a sudden it's a book that's calling to you. It's almost like off on, and there was was in a group of books, and they were all books by the Ruiz brothers. I don't know if you ever read any of Michael Ruiz's works. He wrote the Four Agreements, and children of his have written since, and they're all from the Toltec prophecy, and it's really fascinating stuff. And this is the book that was being highlighted on my bookshelf, and I picked it up and I read it, and I read the whole thing again. And I can't tell you, I just want to recommend the book, because I read it again and reviewed it again after last week, and it was amazing to me how it related to trust and to faith and to God. And I just offer it to you as something to consider, as something to read. I've got it just underlined and underlined it, just and folded back pages and everything. I found it wonderful. And to add to that, during about a week and a half ago, I got this magazine in the mail. It's the Unity magazine, and there on the front of the magazine is the son of Michael Ruiz and his book and an article about him. And you may want to look it up just to back up what I'm saying, or just to familiarize yourself with this gentleman. The work, the Unity, this and this are so in line with Unity, and it's really a wonderful read. It's inspiring, and I just offer it as something to think about. And I'm looking here for my glasses, if you forgive me. They fell to the floor. But I also had saved the August 14th one that Franny read, and I loved it. I couldn't get, and I saved that, and I knew as time went on and I was reading and thinking about all these things and then experiencing Jenny, I thought, no wonder I tore this out. I love it. The August 14th one. And anything is possible when I trust in God. And of course, everybody has different ideas of maybe who God is. I think Unity has a beautiful concept of God. And I say to you that means a lot to me. And there's a man that I know by the name of Sam Shelley. And I met him at a meeting that I attend from time to time called Fry Ideas. And we're all meeting about our work and how we can take our work farther ahead. And it's a very inspiring bunch of people. And Sam Shelley was at a meeting that I went to in Doylestown. And I looked at him. He had a funny lid hat on and kind of was a funky looking guy. But I was very curious why he was there. So I walked up to him and I said, so what's your story? And he said, I had MS and I was headed for a wheelchair. And I was determined I did not want to end up there. I think he said late 40s, early 50s. And I went to my doctors. I said, I want to cut back on all my medication. And I'm going to start meditating. I'm going to start doing yoga. And I'm just going to stop this forward motion. And he did. And he now is holding the position that Louise Hay held in the village at the church there. I think it's a Presbyterian church. And he is now in that position. He healed himself entirely. He now gives classes he gives them on Facebook and other places. I brought him to Pebble Hill Church and he spoke. Very, very inspiring man. I also bought his book and gave it out to people forever, because this young man, young at that, certainly in his 40s, and headed for a wheelchair, and totally reversed all of that. And when we read people like Joe Dispenza now and a lot of other authors, we're getting these kinds of inspirations and talk to us about how we can move forward in our concepts, or how we can meet our challenges. And I think they're all wonderful. I wrote down after I was thinking of talking about Sam in this talk today, I wrote down his message was no stress, only peace. That, when we feel stressed by something that's in our life now, we need to stop whatever we're doing and we need to meditate. And we meditate until we are free of the stress and we're in peace. So our goal is peace. And he's beautiful. At least to me, I'm inspired. So anyway, all of this is me just feeling so good about Jenny and so good about my own ability to trust and so wanting to talk about trust because I think it's a wonderful word and a word that if we really try to develop it even more and just trust what's coming toward us and that we have the power to deal with it and we have the help and we can call on that help. May we all remember that and be filled with hope. And thank you very much. I've enjoyed talking to you about all this. I enjoyed developing this talk and I enjoy developing my trust even more. And I hope you do too. Thank you so much. And let's all just be together. And I came to me that it might be nice to unmute ourselves. And as we're just being together, people could say things. Pardon me?
Oh, excuse me.
You want to ask questions, Lainey?
Oh, I was asking John, are we muted or not? And all this came up on the screen. I'm shocked. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Not at all. Not at all. But did you want to ask anything?
Oh, no, I'm reading Jenny's book myself, and I'm very impressed with it.
Oh, great. That's great. I've not had the chance to get that and read it. So you're enjoying it.
Yes, yes.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's all unmute our mics and just call out something that you love that occurs to you. And I'm going to begin by saying the feeling of light and how it draws me.
Okay. I love Jesus' Course in Miracles. It's changed my life, and
Yes.
it's just there for me whenever I go to it, when I need to go to it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Peace of walking through the woods.
Yes.
Oh, wait for me. I want to go with you.
Mhm.
That's great.
I love it all. No exception of anything and everything. I love it all. It's all for good. I love it all.
And that reminds me of Jenny last week talking about, you know, the preciousness of just that feeling all the time, that huge love. I thought she was beautiful in the way she stated that. Thank you. I love the feeling of peace.
Where's Judy?
Hey, Denny.
Yes.
Hi, this is Judy.
Hi, Judy.
I love unity. I love the community of those of us that are together now and the larger community. And this just seems to be a perfect place to say thank you for, well, you've recommended wonderful books, but you were the first one that told me about the trees, the Overstory by Richard Powers.
Yes.
And this is, besides a Pulitzer Prize winner, this is an amazing, amazing story of community of trees and the interconnectedness of all life. And it certainly belongs on, I think, anybody's spiritual reading list. It's an incredible book. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, I love that book too.
Yeah, it's all about the people who had the guidance and the trust to find their path also. So as when you talk today about the community, this I just finished was just amazing. So I wanna thank you.
Thank you so much.
I love the love of family, the family that we're born into, and the family that we choose.
Beautiful. I love that too. Yeah. Unbelievable.
I love silence.
Mm.
Who said that?
I love the book, The Four
Right.
Agreements. That's one of my
Yes.
favorite books. And I love how when you're searching, everything does kind of just intertwine with everything else. And I feel
Right.
better now in my spiritual search than I think I ever had. Everything I'm finding just intertwines with each other. It's amazing.
Thank you. You know, I love this. I love hearing where, I think it's so valuable to learn where each one of us is in our search and our longing. And I love, Judy, you sharing about the tree book. In fact, that wasn't in my mind when I was developing this, and you're so right. It's such an incredible book. Beautiful.
To
And it
echo
is.
a little bit of Judy and Kathleen, I'd have to say connection, whether it's holding a door for someone unknown and you have that eye contact and you feel immediately connected. And, similar to what Kathleen had mentioned, just the simple grace and the beauty of nature.
Mm, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes. And it's funny as I, agree. It's like you don't need my agreement, but I love that you share. Well, thank you very much. I've always loved the opportunity to be with this group and to share, and I appreciate it very much. And we will move on.
Thank you so much,